Warning, the following audio transmission is based on theory and is intended for entertainment purposes only. It's Doomsday and its affiliates will not be held liable for anything your dumbass does. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome everybody to Safety Sundays with SafePrep and myself. What's going on, man? How are you doing today?
You know what sucks about this podcast?
What?
It's so short that there's no room or time for flirting, sexual innuendos, or small penis jokes.
You know, you do bring up a very valid point. But anyway, so everybody out there that's new, that's listening to the show, make sure you hit that like button, hit that follow button, wherever you're listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, wherever. Make sure you're following so you can get these episodes every Sunday. And today we're actually recording a little bit earlier in the week. Or are we recording later? No, we're recording early. Today is June 16th, 2023. Time is 1939. Yes. And we're going to get into... What did we say we were doing again tonight?
Oh my gosh, bug out
I'm just
vehicles.
Bug out vehicles. So this has been requested, and again, this isn't going to be a total, in-depth coverage of bug out vehicles, like choices, this, that, the other. My mindset with this is things that you can keep in your bug out vehicle, and if you have to bug out, they're just going to make you safer.
Yep.
Yes.
Because most of the folks aren't going to have, we could say you'd like to go out and buy a early model vehicle that doesn't have all the electronic boards and switches in it, so it would be less affected by an EMP. But most of that stuff is out of reach for most of us. So you're kind of left with the vehicle that's in your driveway.
Right. So I think that, okay, so for my mindset on this is I've gone back and forth over the years what could potentially be the best bug out vehicle. All right. Mm-hmm. And I've flip-flopped over the years with this because I knew what I wanted a few years ago and I know what I would take now, and I've been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I keep going back in my mind. I want a late 80s K5 Blazer. That's what I would want.
I look on Facebook Marketplace and see vehicles and, anything 60s, early 70s. I wish we had the money to buy it, and I wish I was good at fixing stuff that wasn't running. But I drive a 2009 F-150, and that's the bug out vehicle we would like to choose. Now, the other thing is you don't get to pick the time when you're going to need a vehicle. So it might be that minivan that did so well keeping up with you on the back roads there in North Carolina.
Right. So for me, it's like the FJ Cruiser is now my bug out vehicle. This is a vehicle that's loaded up with camping gear, loaded up with a bunch of stuff. If I got to go now, almost everything is in that vehicle that I would need for survival, except for a handful of items and oddities, right? Yep. Now, here's the thing. At the moment, the FJ Cruiser needs some work, and it's not currently roadworthy. I had the brakes go out on the thing, so now I have to work on it, all right? So I'm going to say number one safety thing with your bug out vehicles is you need to be running these things frequently, right? Don't have yourself a bug out vehicle that just sits there for that shit hits the fan scenario, because you got to be running these vehicles to identify if everything's problematic and to be able to keep up with maintenance, right?
Yep.
Period. If you're not running it, if you're not checking to see if this thing has leaks or if it's acting funny or running funny or whatever, the last thing you want to be doing is bugging out to where you got to go with all your stuff with you, and now you're stuck going on foot because your vehicle broke down and some lucky guy just comes across your bug out vehicle and gets all your shit.
And it's also a difficult subject to talk about because everybody's got a different idea of what bugging out is. And bugging out, I think like we're talking about it right now, is going from point A to point B, and you have stuff at point A, but if you have to leave point A, you have stuff at point B, or that's where you're going to be able to hang out for a while. Doesn't necessarily mean you're four-wheeling through ditches and out in fields and through forest. It may just be getting A to B.
Right, exactly. Now this is a good segue into what I really wanted to dive into with this episode. And what I really wanted to tear into with this is what kind of tools and accessories would you need to keep in that bug out vehicle to successfully get from A to B, right?
First, so I think folks should be keeping bags in their car, and bags is a whole nother topic. But basic survival gear that is in your bug out bag, your get home bag, I think everybody should have that in their vehicle. When I think about things I can do to my F-150, I can be sure the four-wheel drive's working. It wouldn't. I fixed it. I can be sure that I keep it as topped off as I can all the time on gasoline. I can, go back and listen to last Sunday's episode where we talked about vehicle safety and things like flat tires and all that other stuff, because any of those situations could happen to you when you're bugging out. Lighting, having weapons and ammo in your vehicle, I think that's important. Follow the laws where you're at. Those kind of things are gas cans, some kind of a siphon or a pump to be able to, if I had to do that. So those are some sleeping bags, some extra stuff I keep in my truck in case we have to bug out.
Right. I got you. So this is like where I go to in my mind is what kind of stuff would you encounter along the way A to B when you're bugging out? And there are two things that like really stick out in my mind. All right. And the first thing is a freaking chainsaw, right?
True.
Have a dang chainsaw, because here's the situation. I don't care what the shit hits the fan scenario is. If it's a hurricane that causes grid failure and now there's panic and disrupt and you got to get the hell out of there, that hurricane's also blowing trees down. Same goes with a tornado, right? If highways are blocked and you have to traverse off the road a little bit, you might need a chainsaw because you might have to drop some things out of the way to get through the dang woods, right? Yep. Or you might be, let's say your bug out place is off some back-ass roads, 40 miles up the mountain in the middle of nowhere, where nobody really does road maintenance and shit has hit the fan. How are you going to get those trees out of the way if they've fallen, right?
Yep.
So chainsaw, I think, is a hell of a good tool to go with that. The second thing I would throw in there with that would be some high tensile strength rope. Rope strong enough to hang your vehicle from a freaking tree limb. The strongest rope you could physically put in there, because again, chaos, disaster, abandoned vehicles, you may find yourself having to drag stuff out of the way.
Want to be a guest on the show? Email itsdoomsdaypodcast@gmail.com. That's itsdoomsdaypodcast@gmail.com.
Or you
and with that, and obviously you can't do this on every vehicle, and that's also, these things get expensive, a winch.
Right.
I would love to have a winch on my truck. But I've got to have like the 12, 15,000 pound ones.
Right.
And they're pricey, not cheap. But I'd love to have, but chainsaw is a good idea. I don't have one of those in my truck, but I've got one in the garage. It just sits there. So
now, especially, so that could go in the truck. Now me personally, I know everybody's going to be like, oh, that's stupid, I'm against that. Guys, I'm telling you, I've fallen in love with the electric chainsaws. It is really awesome. Not breathing in two-stroke fumes running these things. It's really awesome that they're not making any noise. They are silent. So a chainsaw echoes through the freaking woods, man. Yep. Like, you could hear a chainsaw a mile away. You're not hearing that electric saw. Silent. No motor noise. It is amazing. So the idea that you also, if you have this, you could stock batteries and have your little charger hooked up in your vehicle versus bringing gasoline and two-stroke, you know what I mean, and having to bring in mixed gas. So yep. I'm sold on these electric chainsaws. I absolutely love mine. All right, so now that we covered the rope, we covered the chainsaws, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a shit ton of extra water in your vehicle, right? Water and water filtration in a bug out scenario. The idea you have to end up on foot, you're going to be walking, it could be hot, you're going to need to hydrate. Have that water. Maybe you get where you're going and your water has been compromised, right? Maybe you have a spring where it diverts water down to your bug out spot and somehow something got in the way and it's not getting there now and you got to go fix it. Well, you don't want to be dehydrated during that process or whatever your repair items might be. So, I mean, a week's supply of water for everybody in your vehicle is not that big of a deal, right? If it's you and your spouse, you could throw 14 bottles of water in the trunk. You know what I'm saying?
True. Just depends on how you're storing it. You want to store water correctly, and it's like keeping hot water bottles in cars and plastics leaching into it and stuff like that. But Jester, you mentioned, water filtration, water purification tablets. You can't have enough of that stuff. We've got them at home. We got them in all the vehicles. But having a little extra water, especially to get you started off, because you don't know what situation you're going to be in where you have to bug out. I'd like to have some water at the very beginning and not have to wait a while to find some.
Right, exactly. And then, how you went back, and I'm just like kind of thinking in my head here, how you went back and you mentioned, having the guns, having the ammunition, have a way to protect yourself. Well, let's think about the idea of maintaining a little bit of OPSEC while you're traveling, all right? Let's talk about the idea that those phones might be offline or you may not want to be tracked. Do you have maps to your bug out location? Have the paper maps. Have multiple routes planned out on those paper maps. If you're somebody who is very directionally challenged, get a compass and learn how to use that compass. You can pull over and utilize that compass and figure out which direction you're going in if you're incapable of reading it off the map or if you're incapable of reading a road sign.
Something I'm in the market for right now, and I'd love to find a used one, but it's hard to find exactly what I'm looking for used. Is actually like a hiking or handheld GPS unit.
I wonder if those could be tracked.
I bet they can, but I mean, there's so many of them. It would be so difficult to find that one.
You'd have to be a pretty big priority for them to want to come track you down.
Yeah.
All right, so getting into that, and then the other thing is, we talk about this for every doomsday scenario, is having comms, right?
Yep.
Being able to listen in, putting that ham radio on scan, and being able to listen to what's going on around you to know if. Here's the big thing: when you get on these roads, and I tell everybody this, you're going to start hearing chatter over the CBs first. The truckers are going to be coming over those CBs. I-95 is blocked off. This highway is blocked off. Can't go this way. Can't go this way. And this is going to be what kind of gives you that motivation to maybe take an alternate route.
So with comms, whether you're using CB or ham radio, amateur radio, they are very inexpensive ways to and very inexpensive external mag mount antennas for all of those different type of radio types. So if you're talking on a radio or listening to a radio inside your vehicle, the vehicle exterior, that metal is shielding that signal, so you're not going to receive as well, and you're definitely not going to transmit as well. So in order to really hear well or talk and get out, you're going to have to get out of the vehicle. So investing in a cheap external antenna that you can just run through the window and connect to your radio while you're driving down the road and be able to monitor comms. Those things are super cheap.
Absolutely. One thing else I would like to mention too is, guys, the bathroom doesn't wait for anybody. So I would highly recommend having toilet paper and wipies in your vehicle.
Throw a urinal in there. They're like $6, man.
How are you going to poop it through a urinal?
Listen. I pee in my little urinal all the time, and it's not even SHTF.
I'm sure you do. But do you poop? But do you go poop in it?
No, I hadn't pooped in it yet.
Well, you let me know how that works out.
It was the first time for everything.
Anyway, having the toilet paper, having the wipies, having the stuff to be able to do your business, because if you're bugging out and your turds decide they want to bug out, there's really no stopping that process.
Nope.
Right?
I think I've got like 4 containers of wipes in my little console between the front 2 seats for some reason. I'm going to be clean and fresh.
Right. And then, so there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of preppers over the years give like really weird pieces of advice, like in regards to bugging out or bugging in or things like this. And I remember hearing one prepper talk about how it's a great idea to put a white flag on your vehicle on the side of the road if you're bugging out and your vehicle goes kaput, because someone would just assume that it's just another vehicle and that it wasn't a bug out vehicle, right? Here's the thing. I think for the werewolf-type preppers out there and everybody else that's going against that, that's going to be a red flag to them that vehicle's worth something. Because everybody else, and shit hits the fan, if it's a bad scenario, they're not worried about doing that. They're going to be freaked out. They're going to be scared. They're not going to be thinking, oh, I need to mark this vehicle inoperable so nobody messes with it.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So
use the white flag as toilet paper.
There you go. Turn it brown, then hang it in your window. That'll keep people away from it. Also, here's the other thing, too. If you find, and I know this is going to go a little bit overboard, but if your vehicle does break down and you know what it is, say it's a radiator hose or it's leaking fluid or it's something you know you could repair, like you can go get supplies from your bug out place and come back and fix it, render it a little bit more inoperable, take the plugs out of it, take the wires off it, do something. That way, if somebody comes along and stumbles across this vehicle and they're like, we could make this work, then they take it and all your shit.
I like that. Yeah.
We got 5 seconds left, dude.
I did this last year. I actually put a bicycle in the back of my truck, and I've got a covered bed. I've got a Lear topper, but I keep a bicycle secured in the back of my vehicle in case the vehicle, I can get a lot. Now, being on a bike might make you a little bit more of a target, but I can definitely get from A to B quicker if I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Rather than walking.
I'm just thinking about you kind of being the town bike and everybody getting a ride.
This is an emergency action message. At approximately 1 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, NORAD is tracking 15 ICBM nuclear missiles inbound to the following cities: Orlando, Miami, Pittsburgh, Dover, Newark, Richland, Philadelphia, New York City, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Boston, Seattle, Detroit. This is an extremely deadly situation. Stay tuned. The next emergency message will be a presidential address.